Hello, dear radio friends. Welcome to this Åke Blomström special, also in the name of our chairman, Tim Desmond, and our coaches, Gabriela Hermer, Conor Garrett, and Simon Elms. The presentation of the work of our three Åke Blomström 2019-2020 winners is always a heartwarming event on the International Feature Conference. This year, however, instead of being comfortably installed under the elegant arches of some Italian palazzo, the next images will show you our more decent and humble houses of the participants and of the coaches. Our device this year will be what can be done in Rome can be done at home. More on how a little mean virus affected seriously the next Åke Blomström 2020-2021, you will hear after the joyful trip now of the young European Radio Armada. And your captain is Simon Elms, ex-BBC.
Hello and welcome to this brief overview of the Åke Blomström Prize winners' work from 2019-2020. Last year, 3 brilliant young radio program makers were awarded the opportunity to study with experienced feature producers from Europe. The 3 winners of the Åke Blomström Award for 2019-2020 were, in alphabetical order, Claudia Gschweitel from Austria, Marta Medvešek from Croatia, currently living in Berlin, and Vivian Schütz from Germany, currently living in the Great Apple, big New York. And I'm delighted that they're all joining us from there now. So welcome to you all. And I'd like to ask you a few questions about your wonderful work, because you all produce fantastic features. And we'll have a chance to listen to some very short extracts in the course of these presentations. So I'd like just to start by saying what was interesting to me was that all 3 programs were driven by, shall we say, obsessed people. There was Stepan in Marta's, Zelda in Vivian's, and Khalid in Claudia's. They were all people who had a passionate story to tell of their own personal encounters with the public. Zelda in her Hasidic Jewish community in New York, Stepan with the whole world in a way, who wants just to pay a visit to his hometown to see a pair of storks. They wanted a good story. And Khalid with the villagers of the little place called Weikendorf. All the programs contain conflict and heartache. All have some degree of drama, particularly Claudia's, where the matter is political. In Stepan's case, it's a question of one man's obsession that everyone wants to take advantage of. While in Vivian's case, the conflict lies between the ultra-Orthodox Jewish requirement to wear a wig in public in conflict with personal freedom and modern feminism. In all 3 cases, though, the individual makes their own way into the future, as indeed we all do. So let's start with a clip from Vivian Schütz's program, Entangled.
First time was on a train.
Jetta.
I was wearing a black hat that had a wide brim made of wool. I definitely thought about, is there anyone on the train who knows me?
And then I
Sarah.
get out of the class and I just let my hair flow in the wind, and it feels so good. Imagine your hair being covered with something so tight that the hair follicles can't even grow properly. And all of a sudden, to take off that wig and be in the New York City, vast, spacious city, and your hair flowing in the wind from side to side, like you just feeling like you own the world, it's such a good feeling.
I thought that I would feel guilty. I thought that I would feel a cloud of negativity on me. And then as I pulled it off, I felt alive. I just felt like almost like taking your blanket off in the morning. Like,
a huge breath of fresh air. And I like to brush my fingers through my hair and feel like Sarah, like me again.
At that moment, I knew that that's what I wanted to get to. I want to get to a point where I felt comfortable like that every day.
And then I get on the subway, and slowly, as I get closer to Brooklyn, I put on my cap again.
Vivian, first of all, to you, I was fascinated by your portrait of this ultra-Orthodox American community as experienced through the unlikely prism of wigs. Can you explain briefly why the wig is so important and what part the wig shop plays in the lives of this very special community?
Sure, yeah, thank you for your words. So I chose the wig because it physically represents a struggle that some Hasidic women that I met face. On the one hand, they are proud of being Jewish and they really want to embrace those commandments, but at the same time, for example, putting on a wig makes them, that's their feeling, makes them look like everyone else, and they feel like they lose their individuality and, yeah, at the end of the day, their identity. And so, for example, Yetta, one of my 3 Hasidic women, she particularly feels like she cannot wear a wig and be true to herself. And the wig is like like a tipping point, and she decides to uncover step by step because she feels she doesn't want to live by that rule, because that's not what for her the religion is about.
So these are not people who need wigs because of an illness or a condition. They are wearing wigs on top of their ordinary hair.
Yes, it's a commandment. They follow this commandment once they are married. Once a woman from the Hasidic community is married, she is supposed to cover her hair in public. Many choose also to cover the hair at home. And they're only allowed to present their natural hair to their husbands. So it's like a thing where you share this very intimate hair, because hair in Jewish culture becomes very holy once a woman is married. And so she's only supposed to share this hair with her husband. And it also has to do something with modesty and spirituality.
Now, this doesn't really chime very well with modern feminism, does it? In the case of at least two of your participants, Zelda and Sarah, they have a conflict with their religion, don't they?
Yes. So Sarah, for example, it bothers her to wear this wig, and she really tries to understand this rule, like the meaning behind it, and she reads about it in the Torah, and she tries to do her research. And even though she knows all the facts, she doesn't really feel that this is so good to her, and so she's struggling a lot. And so she also starts to uncover her hair, but kind of secretly. She goes to the city and then she walks around without her wig. But once she goes back to her community, she puts back on her wig and her hat. And this helps her, this sweet escape, as she calls it, this helps her to commit to this commandment. And she feels like it's important to follow this rule, even though she doesn't fully understand it, but she wants to learn and understand it better.
What really strikes me so forcibly about your piece is that although it sounds very serious and a matter of religious, strong religious conviction in conflict with feminism, which isn't a light-hearted subject, it's a very energetic, very humorous program full of that wonderful Brooklyn sense of energy.
Yeah, I mean, for us, from like the outside perspective, it's also just probably like a wig, and maybe you feel like, why is this such a big thing for them? But I mean, they have to wear this wig every day. They wake up, and one of the first things is they put on the wig. they cannot just leave the house. And so, but yeah, there are moments also in the program, moments during my research where it's kind of, yeah, not funny, but interesting to see also the interaction between the husband and the wife, because the husband also doesn't fully understand the rule, but he's like, it's a given, that's how we do it, please do it. And then she's trying to challenge him, and he wants the best for her. But yeah, it's kind of a little bit, they don't know exactly why, but they still are very much committed and try their best.
Ultra-Orthodox communities are very difficult to penetrate, to get into. How did you gain such fantastic access?
Well, I lived for 1 year in Borough Park, which is a very Hasidic community. Like 90% of the people there are ultra-Orthodox. And that's also what made me interested about the community and their lifestyle. And yes, it was hard to get in touch. I reached out, I talked to strangers, I talked to them also online, and they were open to talk, but not on record. There was a lot about, no, someone could know that it's me, I want to be anonymous, my voice, I don't want that. And so I was researching other Hasidic groups, and that's when I found the Lubavitch community, which is a little bit less insular. They're reaching out more to people. They do use Instagram. I found many Hasidic influencers, interestingly. And that's also how I found then Zelda and her wig shop, because she's very active on Instagram. The same is for Sarah. Like, they post videos every day and talk about their faith. And then I went to the wig shop. And I mean, it was good that I'm a woman, because I was able to be in the wig shop and see them uncovering the hair. And I went there week after week, and yeah, I was looking for interesting women that are open to talk with me and have also an interesting view on the wig and on their face.
Well, you certainly managed to get some fantastic contributions. Well done, Vivian.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. And I do recommend everybody to go to the IFC website and listen to Vivian's program, as indeed for all three of our wonderful winners this year. And I'd like to turn now to Marta. You're in Berlin, Marta?
Yes.
Marta Medvishek. You also had a question of access, I think. Your story was about storks, the bird storks, two very special storks, and the man who lived with them, who's devoted his whole life to them. Tell us what fascinated you about this story. Why is he such an amazing character, and how you managed to get him to talk? Because I think there were some issues there.
Well, for me, what was most interesting at the beginning is that everyone was so obsessed with this story, and I didn't really understand why, because it's just storks. So that's why I first started going there, and I actually went there to record something else for someone else. So that's how I got there. And then when I met Stjepan, I saw that the story is not at all as it's presented or like known in the world already. So that's how my contact with Stjepan started. And what was the second part of your question?
Well, it was how you gained access, because I think Stjepan was rather suspicious about you to begin with.
Well, he's suspicious about all journalists and generally about all people. And I think it's partly because he is very aware of his story by now, because it's something that is, it was his reality, then it was turned into a story, and now he is kind of living in this story. But so he is aware that he is a character in it, and he also would like to get something from it, although he wouldn't. So he's like, I think on one hand he decides not to take profits from it, but on the other hand it makes him frustrated that everyone else seems to get something from it but him, and all this publicity didn't help him offload this over responsibility that he has for Malina.
Well, let's listen to a quick, short, very short, sadly, extract from this amazing story.
Ajde, pa ćemo. Još jednu ribu ima. Ajde, evo. Eto ga. Ajde.
Jel vi nju volite sa sobom kad idete pecat?
Kad nema klepetana, kad ostanemo nas dvoje sami, onda ona ide sa mnom. Onda ona ide sa mnom u auto i ona sjedi ili čeka, stoji kraj mene. Ja dičarim da malo vidi prirodu.
Koliko je njoj trebalo da stekne povjerenje u vas?
Čuj, nije stekla ona njega, jer ona nema kud. Razumiješ, ili ja sam gazda njezine sudbine. Ja da joj nisam donio jest danas 2-3 dana, nema šta, ona će bi krepala. Jel? Ona mora imati vodu, mora imati sve, da samo, sad ću ga obići.
Vi tu imate i vodu gore?
Pa moram sve, ko bi ja sad vuku amper pun vode, nemam snage, moraš sve napraviti.
Već 25 godina?
Da, 25 godina sa ovom godinom. Jer, zlato, a sa suprugom sam živio 32. Prije 10 godina. A taj rak prokleti. Galopirani rak pluća. Ni pušila, ni pila, ni ništa. Samo klap u 3 mjeseca je nastao. Sa 80 kila na 36. Onda što da ti pričam, šta je život.
So it's about storks. It's called Fly or Die, but it's really about human nature, isn't it? I mean, the fly or die refers to the storks themselves, but one gets a sense that it's also about Stepan. It's really his story.
And not just about Stepan. I mean, I think it's about all of us, because I think for me it's really a story about love and loss and sacrifice and also disappointment. But on the other hand, also responsibility and the trust. So like trust that Stepan doesn't have, or also how his trust toward me changes during the time, and also how the way I see him changes with the time. So it's for me really almost not at all the story about storks. It's much more about human nature. Yeah.
He's quite an individual, isn't he? He's quite a difficult character, would you say?
Yeah, I would say for me it was fascinating that on one hand he is this very kind and gentle person towards his storks, and then he can turn in a second into a very frustrated old grumpy man who just really can't stand anyone or anything. So often he would just switch his voice to this other tone and start ranting about politics and about human nature and the climate change and everything. And I couldn't really stop him. So even though this frustration wasn't really directly directed on me, I would still get a lot of this negative energy, and sometimes it was very challenging for me, just to take it all in. And also I think because it was the first time that I was working with someone for this long, that I didn't really know how to set boundaries. So I didn't have the courage to tell him now it's enough. So maybe stop now and let's go back to the story. I would just let him talk, and sometimes, yeah, I really felt it was not comfortable anymore for me.
As a journalist, I get a sense that you were slightly embarrassed about asking him the questions because you felt like so many other people, you were possibly taking advantage of his story.
Yeah, definitely. And the first time when I was there, I was really aware of it, mostly because he was the one who said it. So the first thing he said was like, I'm not going to tell you the whole story again. It's already published so many times. What do I get from it? And then I realized that I have nothing to say. Why would he want to do it? Why am I different from the others? And with time, I kept having this doubt myself again and again, if now I'm trying to tell his real story, but it's still a story I'm making, and it's still his story that I'm taking. And so I'm still wanting to get something from him, and I'm responsible. So it's all in my hands what I'm going to do with this story, and whether he will like it in the end or not. Am I really going to pay attention to it, or just let him listen to it in the end? I was aware of it, that it's just that it will be my version of the story mostly. So I did feel sometimes a bit guilty.
Has he heard the program? Was he happy with it?
He hasn't heard it yet because it's still in production, but I'm thinking of visiting him again when I'm in Croatia, because he doesn't really use the internet. So the only other way is to send him a CD. But I thought, since we spent so much time together already, I think I would actually like to see how he reacts to it. And I'm not really afraid of what he will say, because I have this time clear conscious.
And I think you said the most difficult thing that you faced with this program was the mountain of recordings that you managed to get in the course of the many visits you made there. How did you manage to get through all that?
So I had I don't know, 14 or 16 hours of him, and I would say 70% of it is just him being really frustrated. I mostly listened to half an hour a day and just wrote if there was something interesting in it, but it was really heavy for me. I had to take it in little bits, and then I was first working mostly with notes, and then it took a lot of time. It took a lot of time and patience, and there was also a lot of weeks when I just didn't want to have anything with it. Although I still think there is really something warm in this story, and there is a lot of love and care, and I learned a lot from it. But sometimes it was just overwhelming how much frustration there was, and disappointment.
But it is a love story. It's a love story of two storks.
Yeah, but is it?
Well, I think we'll have to let listeners judge that for themselves. It's an amazing story, and it's an amazingly well-told story. So thank you, Marta, very much indeed. And finally, we move on to Claudia's program, Claudia Geschweitel from Austria. Claudia, your program also has a particular and very interesting original lens. We've heard how wigs can tell us a story about a particular community in New York, how one man in his obsession with storks tells us about human nature in Croatia. But your story is about one man and a village called Vikendorf. Let's listen to a short extract, and then we'll talk about it.
Es bilden sich kleine Diskussionsgruppen.
Lass uns mich ausreden. Die Leute sind größtenteils zu fett. Das heißt, in 10, 15 Jahren werden höchst teure Hüftoperationen, Knieoperationen fällig. Alles von der Krankenkasse bezahlt. Eine Hypothek, die wir uns so in Wahrheit nicht wirklich vorstellen wollen.
Können Sie sagen, was das jetzt mit dem Zuzug einer palästinensischen Familie zu tun hat?
Die Muslimen sind halt so.
Wie sind sie denn, die Muslime?
Da schauen Sie sich's an. Wenn Sie es nicht erkennen sollten, gehen Sie mal in den 10. Bezirk und dort...
Wir sind in Weikendorf.
Dort ist ja wurscht, aber es geht nicht um Weikendorf, es geht um die Muslime.
Herr Seidelmann ist nicht aus Weikendorf, sondern extra aus Wien zur heutigen Demonstration angereist. Als Protesttourist. Er verteilt ein Flugblatt mit der Überschrift Fakten und Fragen.
Fakten und Fragen. Wem und zu welchem Preis fällt das Haus zu, wenn der Palästinenser zahlungsunfähig wird? Ist, rein theoretisch natürlich, eine Umwidmung auf eine kleine Moschee möglich?
Die Dame mit Schild ist die grüne Vizebürgermeisterin der Nachbargemeinde Genserndorf.
Also auf der einen Seite steht, wir alle sind Mutter Erdes Menschenkinder, weil ich empfinde, dass es egal ist, aus welchem Land man kommt. Wir sind alle Menschen und nur wenn wir miteinander gut auskommen, ja, dann ist es auch lebenswert auf der Erde.
So, Claudia, your program is about a village, and there was a demonstration we heard in that particular extract. What was going on? What was the demonstration about? And what is it with Weikendorf?
Yeah, there was a Muslim family from Palestine that wanted to buy a house in Weikendorf. Weikendorf is a really, really small village in Austria, but they didn't receive the necessary permit. So the mayor didn't want them to move there, and he made quite a racist statement about that. And also the residents didn't want them to move there. So there was a lot of excitement and agitation on all sides, and there was this demonstration being organized. And yeah, the story, the whole piece is about this family, the refugee family, who is fighting for their right to move to Weikendorf.
Your protagonist is Khalid, but it's also the village itself. The village was at odds with this Palestinian emigrant family. What fascinated you about the story? Was it a microcosm for a larger discussion about the very topical question that we have at the moment in the Black Lives Matter discussion about racism? Or was it simply a story about small communities and the way they react to outsiders?
Yeah, I think it's like all of that. For me, it was fascinating in the beginning how quickly this issue kind of exploded, and it became so heated and tense, the whole discussion, that I thought, well, this is never going to end. There will be no solution for that. And I was asking myself, well, how could this have happened? And yeah, I studied communication theory, so for me it's also very interesting to look at this aspect. And at some point, when I was making the documentary, I realized that all the main characters in the feature, they had very, very strong opinions about each other. Also, none of them had ever met in real life. They had never talked to each other. They only had contact via press, and there was a lot of rumors and social media and all that, but they never had talked to each other face to face. And for me, this was very interesting, and it's also a part in the feature. Marshall McLuhan, the media theorist, he said a long time ago, he predicted this actually. He said that in an age where communication does no longer take place face to face, that it's very easy that a molehill becomes a mountain, and then problems kind of escalate and everything comes completely detached from where it comes from. And I think this is a big problem in our society in general at the moment. So yeah, this was interesting for me.
And it became a massive news story, didn't it? I mean, this was a worldwide story. Everybody was flocking to Weickendorf. That must have been a big problem for a feature maker. And I think anybody in our community will empathize with the issues when suddenly news come in with their big cameras and their big microphones and their boots and trample all over the story. It's difficult. How did you manage that?
Yeah, it was very difficult for me because like the residents from the village, they were completely annoyed by the media. Some of them were traumatized, and they were all complaining to me that the media had portrayed them as racists, and it was all wrong, and they had this bad reputation because of this case, and they were angry with me as well and shouting at me and not being very friendly. So I had a hard time actually convincing them to talk to me, because I always said, like, I want to show the whole piece, I want to show everything, I won't cut it down to just a few statements. Yeah, so this was quite difficult.
And it was a story that didn't end quite as you'd expected it. It was very protracted, which of course, as anybody who's made a program that's happening in real time knows, you never quite know where it's going to end. This one nearly didn't end at all, but in the end ended very differently from how you expected it. I think you had to remake the end.
Yes, I did. And yes, it was at the beginning, it was very frustrating for me because I thought, well, oh my God, this is never going to end. And at some point the case was going to court. And then I thought, oh my God, now this is going to take years. And yeah, it was frustrating. But on the other hand, it was also very good for the story, I guess, because there were many unexpected twists and turns. So yeah, I think in the end, it pays off to be patient.
Well, thank you, all three of you. The twists and turns of Weickendorf and the twists and turns of the Åke Blomström Prize 2019-2020 are all available online, and I do commend all three wonderful programs to you. Finally, before Edwin comes in to say a few concluding words, I'd like to ask all three of you what it was that you would say to people, to this year's and to the future students of the Åke Blomström Prize. What would you say that you most gained from the experience? What is the special Åke Blomström magic? Vivian.
For me, one big thing was attending the conferences, really from the beginning till the end, and listening to all those pieces, meeting people, hear the discussions, participate in them. And then what was also really intense was just having a coach that really is also very invested in the story, and we had many feedback rounds, and this was really helpful because there were moments where I wasn't lost, but where there were problems that a protagonist ghosted me, and then I had someone on my side who gave me also some tips, and yeah, I could just improve some techniques that I had heard about, and now I understood them better. Like, always roll tape.
Claudia, Martha? Claudia.
Yeah, I think also for me, participating at the events, it was really mind-blowing at some point, like hearing all those brilliant pieces and getting inspiration from it. And what I also had was, I think what was really important and good is getting feedback from different listeners, I guess. So this was very like even at the very early point of production to give it to somebody and that he listened to it and have feedback and rethink the way that you're telling your story. And yeah, I never did that before. I always had like, yeah, the program is finished and then the audience listens to it. But I think it's really helpful to have feedback before that. Good.
Marta, you've attended many IFCs, so listening to people talk about the the experience of program making and in Berlin at the Pre-Europa. So maybe that was less of a surprise for you, but what was the biggest thing for you?
Well, for me, it was the Åke Blomström training, the 2 days that we had in Ireland and then 1 day in Berlin, because it was also feedback sessions, but very much different from what I've seen at Pre-Europa and the IFC, because you are in the process and you're just putting everything out there, the ideas, and you are not very articulated, you don't know yet what it's about. And then just hearing different people react to it differently, I found that really valuable. And also for me, what was really nice was that there are 3 winners. So there was kind of companionship between us and encouragement, even every time when it felt like I'll never do it, but then they say, come on, you'll do it. And I say, oh, but I'm so late, I will never meet the date. I will never meet the deadline. Then they said, oh no, but we are also late, don't worry, just do it. And for me, that was really, really, really nice.
Well, thank you, Marta. Thank you for all your work, from Vivian, from Claudia, from Marta, and from everybody at Åke Blomström, all the tutors. Thank you very much indeed for your wonderful participation. And to Edwin Brees, the godfather, as we now know him, of the Åke Blomström Prize, thank you for all your coordination, and a few words to conclude.
You can imagine how pleasant and rewarding it was for Marta, Claudia and Vivian, having been trained in the shadow of the International Feature Conference and the Pre-Europa, and to have taken profit of these huge, nervous, creative bubbles. In the beginning of this year, however, we were told, due to the coronavirus, that all workshops, meetings, exercises with physical approach between coach and participant would be not possible anymore this year. So then, how could we set up a virtual training and coaching for our 3 newcomers, Dries from Belgium, Agnieszka from Poland, and Lina from Germany? First thing we wanted absolutely to avoid were 3 or more hours of long PowerPoint presentation. This is educational torture. Instead, everyone got at home those presentations with embedded audio and with English translations to consume at their own tempo. This homework was followed by a 1-hour collective Zoom session in which the participants could put their questions, remarks, and suggestions to the authors, and thus a lively discussion developed from that. And so, this way, between Berlin, Brussels, Vilnius, London, Belfast, Warsaw, Leipzig, and Dublin, we hopped from storytelling to recording scenes, to dramaturgy, to the use of music, and to the secrets of investigation journalism. We don't know if we will meet our friends later this year at the Pre-Europa, but one thing is sure, that there is a kind of geographical empathy and an acoustic border-crossing mystery that could overcome many, many confinements when there is a real will to meet. And now, for Marta, Claudia and Vivian, all best for a brilliant radio future. Ciao.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Ciao.